Mheshimiwa Spika, nilikuwa nimekinoa Kiswahili changu kwa ajili ya ujio wa Waziri Aisha Jumwa ili tuweze kupatana moja kwa moja. Kwa hivyo utaniruhusu nizungumze Kiswahili hicho ili kisiende bure hata kama hajafika. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwanza nimjulishe ndugu yangu seneta wa Meru kwamba nimefanya kikao pamoja na mwenyekiti wa kamati ya usafiri Mheshimiwa Karungo Wathangwa na yule ambaye ni balozi wa nchi ya Japan kuhusu shida za trafiki katika barabara ya Ngong Road, na ametuahidi kwamba serikali ya Japan kupitia ushirikiano na serikali ya Kenya itazindua mfumo wa mabasi ya kasi katika barabara hiyo ya Ngong Road, na natumai kwamba itapelekea wewe kupata nafuu unapofika kazini hapa katika bunge la Senate. Jambo la pili, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kwamba mimi ni baadhi ya wale ambao wanakaa katika ile kamati ya SBC ama huduma za bunge hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa kweli tunapata msukumo sana kutoka kwa hao wenzetu ambao tunawakilisha katika kamati ile, kwa sababu ukiangalia ratiba ya masuala ambayo yalikuwa yashughulikiwe leo hii, Mheshimiwa Enoch Wambua ametoka Kitui leo asubuhi ili aweze kuuliza masuala yake kwa yule waziri wa usafiri. Kuna masuala mengi hata mimi nilikuwa nataka nimuulize yule ambaye ni waziri wa masuala ya kifedha kuhusu mfumo mzima wa e-citizen ambao Wakenya wengi wanatusukuma tufanye kitu juu yake. Kwa hivyo ni jambo la kuvunja moyo sana, haswa kwa waziri Aisha Jumwa ambaye nilimuona juzi, Mheshimiwa Spika, akiwa maeneo ya kule Western akiwarai wakazi wa Vihiga kutoruhusu viongozi fulani kuzungumza iwapo maoni yao yatakinzana na maoni yake ama maoni ya watu wa mrengo wake. Na nilishtuka sana kwa sababu najua mawaziri wafai kujiingiza katika siasa, na aliibua hisia kali sana kwangu kwa sababu alizungumzia swala ambalo lilikuwa linanihusu wakati moja nikiwa katika eneo bunge lake.
Seneta wa Nairobi.
Mheshimiwa Spika, namaliza.
Hoja ambayo iko mbele ya Seneti kwa sasa,
naam,
ni kutokuwepo kwa mawaziri. Walioyafanya wiki iliyopita ama mwezi uliopita hayaambatani kamwe na hoja ambayo iko mbele yetu.
Nimekuelewa Mheshimiwa Spika.
Uzungumze pengine unashtumu vikali ama
ndo nachanga huo ukali, yani Spika, tafadhali.
Unaanzia mbali sana.
Kwa dakika moja tu nimalize.
Umeanzia mbali.
Yani kitu ambacho nilikuwa nataka kiibuke wazi ni kwamba mawaziri hawa wanapata nafasi ya kufanya mambo mengine, lakini shughuli ya bunge hawatilii kipaumbele. Alikuwepo kwenye mazishi, nimetoka kwenye stesheni ya redio ya KBC, wananiambia alikuwepo jana na yeye katika kituo hicho hicho. Kama anapata fursa ya kwenda mazishini, kukemea viongozi, kwenda katika vyombo vya habari, kwa nini asije hapa na sisi pia tupate fursa ya kuzungumza naye? Kwa sababu dadangu Gloria, Mheshimiwa Senator Gloria Oruoba, wiki iliyopita alitukemea sana, haswa viongozi wa vyama ambao walishiriki ile mdahalo ama dialogue ambayo ilikuwepo, ya kwamba tuliwacha masuala ya kina mama nyuma. Nilikuwa nataka waziri aje hapa adhirishe kwamba si kwa kukosa kuwasilisha hoja zetu kama viongozi wa ODM, bali kuna masuala ambayo yalikuwa yanafanyika ndani ya wizara yake. Kwa hivyo ni yeye pekee alikuwa anaweza kuniondoa katika mtego uliokuwa umetegwa na Mheshimiwa Gloria, lakini sasa hayupo hapa. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa, mimi nataka nikemee vikali kukosa kuja mbele ya bunge kwa Mheshimiwa Aisha Jumwa, haswa kwa sababu wenzake wengine walikuwa na ile courtesy ya kuandika barua kwa Spika. Heshima, asante Mheshimiwa Spika, walikuwa na ile heshima kwa bunge hili kuandika barua kusema kwamba ama katesi, naambiwa unaweza sema katesi Mheshimiwa Spika. Wakaandika barua kujulisha wabunge kwamba hawatafika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka nikuombe swala moja tu. Wakati ambapo tulikuwa katika mkutano wa SBC, niliuliza swala, je, kuna njia gani ya kuwajulisha wale ambao wameuliza maswala mapema kwamba maswala yao hayatapata kujibiwa kwa sababu waziri ameandika barua? Lakini nikaelezwa kwamba kutakuwa na ugumu kwa sababu wenzetu hawa wakiambiwa kwamba waziri haji na wao pia hawaji. Tunataka tu tungependa Mheshimiwa Kadhuri Murungi apambane na hali yake kule Ngong Road, afike hapa hata kama waziri hayuko tuweze ku...
Seneta wa Meru, hoja ya nidhamu yako ni...
Niko kwenye hoja ya nidhamu.
Hii imeruhusiwa, hii hoja yangu imeruhusiwa vizuri na Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, sio vema kiongozi seneta wa Nairobi yale mambo yanazungumzwa kwa mkutano SBC, ni bora kweli aje hapa kwa seneti aweze kuweka haya maneno wazi yale yanazungumzwa kwa kikao cha SBC. Na mbona anatoa siri ya kamati ya SBC, anakuja kutoa hizo siri hapa? Kwa sababu Bwana Spika.
Asante sana Seneta Wameru. Seneta Wameru, utendakazi wa seneti unafanyika katika ukumbi huu na pia katika kamati zetu, na hakuna siri ambayo tuweza kuificha, maanake kazi ile yote ni kazi ya seneti. Kwa hivyo seneta wa Nairobi amefanya vyema kuweka paruanja ile hali ilivyokuwa kule. Endelea umalize hoja.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kuniopoa kutoka kwa mikono ya Mheshimiwa wa Meru. Mheshimiwa, kwa kweli mimi ni mwakilishi pale SBC wa hawa wenzangu hapa, na ni muhimu kwamba yote ambayo yanaendelea pale tuweze kuwajuza, kwa sababu ulivyosema wewe mwenyewe hamna siri. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kuomba tu ya kwamba kuwe na mfumo, hata kama arafa itaandikwa kwa yule seneta ambaye alikuwa ameuliza swala mwenyewe, basi na kuweka paruanja ulivyosema, lakini mwenye kuuliza maswala haya ajulishe kwamba kwa bahati mbaya ama kwa sababu moja ama nyingine, yule waziri ambaye ulikuwa unataka kumuuliza maswala hatafika leo, ili watu waweze kujipanga Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini ni vizuri tuwe hapa kwa ajili ya shughuli zingine za bunge, na natumai kwamba kikao hiki hakitatibuka kwa huu utovu wa nidhamu unaoonyeshwa na wale mawaziri kama Aisha Jumwa. Nakushukuru Mheshimiwa Spika.
Seneta Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, kwani wewe utanifundisha vile nitazungumza katika Senate?
Senator Boni.
Thank
Don't
you.
engage your colleagues.
Thank you.
Talk through the chair.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I have this inkling that the minister who has failed to come rudely this morning is holed somewhere following these proceedings now, just to see how we are going to handle her case. And I want to request you, Mr. Speaker, sir, that you allow the House to exercise Standing Order number 51D. And because the minister is watching these proceedings, 51D, Mr. Speaker, states that the Senate may, where a cabinet secretary fails without reasonable cause to appear and respond to questions under this part, move a motion to censure the cabinet secretary. This minister is now ripe for motion of censure because she has never appeared before this House. And severally, we have asked her to come and respond to matters of grave national importance. She's a letdown to the structure of government. She's failing the executive, and with due respect, without being seen to be using the name of the president, I put it to the president that this is dereliction of duty. This minister is not fit to hold public office. If she was, she would not have failed to find time to be here this morning, and last week find time to go and consult with the leader of the opposition in waiting at his Capitol Hill office. Why does she choose to transact matters on gender, 2/3 rule, at Capitol Hill, and she cannot come and appeal for the same in this House? Mr. Speaker, you must use the vast powers in your possession. You protect the integrity of the Senate. A minister cannot believe that she can hold us at ransom. There are so many young women, there are so many middle-aged women, there are so many women of advanced age, Mr. Speaker, who are fit to serve this country as minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise under Standing Order number 105 on statement of fact, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the good senator from Malinya, the senator of Kakamega, has indicated that when the minister went to Capitol Hill, the minister was transacting on particular agenda, which he has said was agenda about women. Can he prove to this House that is privy to the conversation that took the minister to Capitol Hill, whether there were formal conversations or informal conversation, and whether indeed he is privy to the agenda?
Senator Eddy,
yes.
Let's save time to transact business. You know, there was a press conference after the meeting, and everything is in the public domain. So just conclude, Senator.
Mr. Speaker, I want to appeal to the young senator from Migori.
Don't appeal, just proceed to conclude your
Yes,
remarks.
that if we must defend certain positions, let us defend them reasonably.
I've already told him that, Senator.
Thank you.
Just proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we worked so hard to form this government. You and I, and many others, we were not working hard so as to allow people in office, people who would then, Mr. Speaker, be tiptoeing in and out of office. We wanted people to stamp their authority so that our women, in fact, I believe, what is the name of, yes, Senator Gloria, I think she's the youngest in the House. She should be appointed the minister in place of this mama who doesn't have any idea of how important it is to appear before this House. Oh, Miraj is the youngest. She was quarreling me, that's why I did not.
If you're done, kindly take your seat. Senator Enoch Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand to condemn in the strongest terms possible this trend that is actually gaining root in this House, that cabinet secretaries decide whether to attend committee meetings or plenary, and they know somehow that they can get away with it. Mr. Speaker, I have argued elsewhere, and I want to argue here, that we are the people, we are the leaders, to give this House the dignity that is due to it. And it will not happen, Mr. Speaker, if we entertain a situation where honorable senators wake up early on Wednesday morning, fully aware that they are coming to interact with cabinet secretaries on matters related to dockets that these cabinet secretaries had. And out of 3, not a single CS shows up. The Speaker, in other jurisdictions, something would give. In other jurisdictions, the Speaker, the chair would stamp the authority of this House and demand that if there is a cabinet secretary within the boundaries of this country, they must appear before this House in the next 30 minutes, and that would happen. Mr. Speaker, this casual way of dealing with the Senate, and we are not even overreaching our mandate as a Senate. The Constitution, not even our standing orders, the Constitution is very clear. Article 153, on the decisions, responsibility, and accountability of the cabinet. it states very clearly in black and white that a cabinet secretary, I'm reading verbatim, Article 153(3), that a cabinet secretary shall attend before a committee of the National Assembly or the Senate when required by the committee and answer any question concerning a matter for which the cabinet secretary is responsible. Mr. Speaker, that statement is explicit as explicit can get. The decision by the cabinet secretary for roads, that's where I'm going to begin, because I have two questions that are listed for a response from the CS responsible for roads. Mr. Speaker, the CS for roads knows very well, wherever he is, that the matters that I'm raising, those questions, are matters that he addressed himself to when he was a senator in this house representing Elgeyo Marakwet. Now he is a CS, he can make a decision on the compensation of the people from Kibwezi all the way to Mwingi, persons affected by a road project, and he just decides to stay away. The Speaker, I take great exception to that decision. Lastly, on the matter of Senate CS for gender, Aisha Jumwa. Mr. Speaker, I was really excited about today's sitting because there is a matter that we would have put to rest today. There have been accusations and counter-accusations from our honorable lady senators and from the women of this country about the place of the two-third gender rule in the NADCO report. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to have a face-to-face conversation with the CS responsible for that matter on the floor of this house, so that she can tell us what role she played. Mr. Speaker, we would have put this matter to rest today, because it is her who approached the NADCO committee and said, let us remove this matter from your discussion because there is something that I am doing and I'm very sure I will succeed. That's a matter that we would have held a conversation around today, Mr. Speaker, and settled that matter. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm still pursuing the line that because you have the power, Mr. Speaker, and that power is given to you by the supreme law of the land, to demand that in the next 30 minutes, CS Aisha Jumwa makes an appearance on the floor of this Senate so that we transact that business and we get done with it. Mr. Speaker, I submit.
Senator Mungatana.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi na mimi nitoe maoni yangu. Bwana Spika, leo waziri wa fedha hakufika hapa Seneti, waziri wa barabara hakufika Seneti, waziri wa jinsia pia hakufika Seneti. Bwana Spika, ile kanuni ya kudumu 51D ambayo Seneta Khalwale ambaye ameitaja iko na adhabu kubwa sana kwa hawa mawaziri ambao ni kuleta hoja hapa ya kuwatoa kazini. Lakini Bwana Spika, mimi ningekuwa nimefikiria kwamba SBC wangekaa tubadilishe hii sheria ama tuiongezee na hapo chini. Mbali na kutumia nyundo kuua inzi, Bwana Spika, tungeweka kwamba iwe ni automatic ama ni mtu akikosa kufika kwa mara ya kwanza, Spika bila kuuliza swali ni $1,000,000. Mara ya pili ni $5,000,000 na mtu analipa mwenyewe, waziri analipa mwenyewe. Mara ya tatu ndio hii kanuni ya kudumu 51D iletwe hapa hoja. Na nilikuwa naomba wale wenzetu ambao wanakaa kwa SBC tutengeneze kitu ambao tunaweza kuitumia. Iwe ni automatic, sio lazima speaker akitoa ruling umekosa ni milioni 1, ukiwa umekosa mara pili ni milioni 5, mara ya 3 ni hoja. Iwe ni automatic, sio kitu ambao tunakuja kudebate. Hivi Bwana Spika, tukigeuza kanuni zetu itatusaidia kupeleka message kwa hawa wenzetu ambao wamekaa kwa nafasi hizo kwamba ni lazima tuheshimu seneti na tuheshimu nafasi ambazo sisi tunafanya kwa niaba ya wananchi. Asante sana Mheshimiwa.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with colleagues who have spoken before us that Senate does not sit here. And the fact that we amended the law to bring ministers or cabinet secretaries to the House to answer questions, that just Senate doesn't sit here in vain, and that the ministers and or cabinet secretaries must take it so seriously, and that the law should then demand, I want to agree with Senator Mugatana, that it becomes very punitive unless there is a sufficient reason, and which can only be a cabinet meeting. No other reason, or maybe even if one had approved that they are unwell. But even in that position, give notice early enough. Not the way Senator Juma has done, to give a notice, this morning, to send a letter this morning, is really ridiculous. It is disrespectful to this House. And Mr. Speaker, I urge you to stamp your authority that she be awarded 30 minutes to appear before this Senate or fail the total consequences of impeachment. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Chirange.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to join my colleagues in expressing strongest reservations on what we should be doing. Mr. Speaker, when we amended these standing orders, it was in the interest of all people who we represent with. We don't represent ourselves, Mr. Speaker. And this habit of cabinet secretaries not appearing when required, we used to see it in committees, but it looks like we have been lax enough that they are now taking plenary for granted, Mr. Speaker. Because I think if we were aware that Cabinet Secretary of Roads, Treasury, and Gender was not appearing, Mr. Speaker, sir, then there would be no need of scheduling them on the order paper. We would be even doing motions or bills or other statements, Mr. Speaker. So it is very unfortunate that today in the morning, Mr. Speaker, we woke up very early. And yesterday I heard through rumors, Mr. Speaker, that CSs would not be appearing. I wish in the past or in future, as my brothers have suggested and sisters, colleagues, that they should communicate to us, Mr. Speaker, because you can see I'm the heaviest casualty, Mr. Speaker, because 3/4 of questions that were to be asked was through you, was truly, and the people of Nandi were glued to their TV stations, Mr. Speaker, knowing that we'll get real answers today on the status of roads, Mr. Speaker. The nation was glued that today we'll know the status of Kenya Airways and financial operations and other operations, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, many people from Kericho County would have known at the renovation and expansion of Kerengaya Strip in Kericho, Mr. Speaker. So I find it out of place, Mr. Speaker. I remember during Kibaki era, President Kibaki era, when President Kibaki used to know that you are supposed to appear before Parliament, he would prefer that you appear before Parliament before going to any other state functions, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, and we have agreed at the floor of this House before that 2 important functions of a cabinet secretary or executive is 1 is a cabinet meeting, and number 2 is appearing before Parliament. Mr. Speaker, this is a calculated evasion of not appearing before this House, Mr. Speaker. So I request, Mr. Speaker, in future, I don't know what Senate Business Committee where you chair, you need to provide guidance, Mr. Speaker. And I agree with what senators have said. Any minister who does not appear when required by this House, Mr. Speaker, should be fined heavily. And I'm happy that the Powers and Privileges Bill passed yesterday. One question goes with 5 million, Mr. Speaker, and they pay from their own source, Mr. Speaker. So looking at my questions, the CS should have paid around 20 million, which I know some of the CSs don't have problem with, because nowadays they have a lot of cash running around, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, second and finally is on the issue of gender. I find it expressed reservations. And, Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with, although he has left, my colleague, is it deputy or minority leader, said, Mr. Speaker, that these CSs are busy answering us in matangas, in baby showers, in bridal showers, and birthday parties, Mr. Speaker, but they cannot come and answer. For me, I have always been answered in funerals, Mr. Speaker, which I find it out of place and obnoxious, Mr. Speaker. But when I give the CS of Rose a chance to come and answer these questions on behalf of the great people of Kenya and Nandi, they don't find it convenient. But if they hear this weekend there is a function, a social function of any nature, they will hire a chopper and fly and come and answer before the people, Mr. Speaker. So we should stop taking Kenyans for fools, Mr. Speaker. We cannot operate this way, Mr. Speaker. In fact, my advice to the CSs, they should reduce even going to social gatherings and use this premium platform, Mr. Speaker, where it is organized, you answer, you clarify, you table evidence. Instead of waiting for functions to happen during weekend, Mr. Speaker, or a rampage, to come and give out money and bombosel Kenyans, calaventing, perambulating, which does not help in any way, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the CS of gender, I am one believer that CSI Ischa Jumwa is doing extremely well, but today I am disappointed, Mr. Speaker. Because when you are debating NADCO and you are the one who guided us, and I saw some people were trying to blame you yesterday, they don't know how wise you are. I beg to forgive them on your behalf, because they are trying to blame you on the issue of NADCO, Mr. Speaker. When the NADCO report was being presented, we were told there was a tactical, calculated move by the gender ministry that they were doing somewhere mysteriously to address the issue of a third gender rule. Mr. Speaker, I woke up on behalf of all women, girls, and many others, Mr. Speaker, to come and listen to this strategy that is being employed by gender to address a third gender rule, Mr. Speaker. And you can see the number of women senators in the Senate today is quite high, Mr. Speaker, because we really wanted to find out how do we resolve this thing that has been elusive since 1994 on achieving the third gender rule. But I want to assure the women leaders, women senators, and women of this country, there is hope, because the president himself believes in a third gender rule, Mr. Speaker. So even if the Speaker, and I want to agree with my colleagues, let the CS appear in the next 30 minutes, we can suspend the House, ensure wherever she is, because I am aware, Mr. Speaker, there is no cabinet meeting today. So I am assured that there is no any other urgent thing that they can, Mr. Speaker. So why don't you suspend the House, order the CS to appear within 30 minutes, and also to come with a fine, Mr. Speaker, to ensure the senators are comfortable, so that when they are answering questions, Mr. Speaker, please, going into the future, let SBC guide us or become innovative. We are not guiding the ABC, you are the one guiding. Let us become innovative, Mr. Speaker. And I want to advise colleagues, let us, the issues of the plenary and the Senate remains here. When you want to make your comments in the press conferences and funerals and other things, please reserve it there. But don't discuss the conduct and functionality of the Speaker of the Senate. Other lower house will defend their own Speaker. Us will defend ours. So if you have a problem, please discuss it with your wife in your bedroom at night, but don't bring it out in the public. Mr. Speaker, I express strong reservations against non-appearances of CSS. I thank you.
Senator Eddy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think I want to start by saying that, Mr. Speaker, on 30th of November, 2023, the Prime Cabinet Secretary was to appear in this House. And, Mr. Speaker, if you remember, he did not appear. And colleague and esteemed senators did pronounce themselves on the issue very strongly. But it appeared like it ended there. We did not take any action. And Mr. Speaker, I empathized with you because you've even had today the whip, the majority whip, inviting us to the, inviting our attention to Standing Order number 51D, which, Mr. Speaker, says that the Senate may, where a cabinet secretary fails, without reasonable cause, and underline the word reasonable cause, to appear and respond to questions under this part, move a motion to censure the cabinet secretary. Now, I do understand that, Mr. Speaker, the requirement of this particular standing order is to the extent that the Speaker, being a neutral figure running the House, cannot initiate any action under that particular standing order. And therefore, it behooves my fellow colleague senators to actually take action. So what I would have wanted to see is perhaps Senator Mungatana or Senator Boni Aluale actually taking action and coming to this House and telling us, this is my motion to censor this particular CS for disrespecting this House and taking it forward. That's the way we should be moving as a Senate. And I wanted to protect you, Mr. Speaker. Now that you have protected us so many times this entire year, may I protect you on that? But then, I also wanted to observe that we as senators elected by the people are very reasonable people. That is why the word reasonable appears in that particular standing order. And therefore, we are not malicious. To the extent that if there is any CS that takes us seriously and takes us at our own estimate of the seriousness we bring in this country as a House, then they should be able to take us seriously. What do I mean by this, Mr. Speaker? I'm in possession of the 3 letters of the CSs who are supposed to be in this House today. And I will argue a case on which kind of CSs we should be able to censor and the ones that we should not be able to censor. Mr. Speaker, on 28th of February, 2024, the CS for transport, that is CS Kipchumba Murkomen, wrote a letter. And this letter, he did indicate, the title of it was, he was requesting for a rescheduling of appearance date before the Senate plenary. And his reasons were this. And having accepted that he received a letter from this House dated 27th, meaning that he was responding on 28th, a day immediately after I received the letter from this Senate, he said that unfortunately the date of my scheduled appearance before the Senate coincides with a hearing in the matter of arbitration proceedings, that is the KU Railways Holding Limited versus the Republic of Kenya and the Republic of Uganda in London, which is an emerging issue that actually came. And Mr. Speaker, I'm privy to the fact that this particular letter was considered by SBC, and therefore the understanding was reached at with this particular CS. A reasonable House as the Senate wouldn't censor this kind of CS because he has been respectful, he has wrote his letter on time, and indeed responded in a record time to the extent that SBC did deliberate on it. I don't see a problem with this, Mr. Speaker. The second is actually CS Chris Kipto, Daktari mwenyewe. It's a PS. He responded to the request for him to appear before this House. And his reason also, I might invite the Senate to consider, which was, he will be out of country, that is the CS will be out of the country, attending the 56th session of the Economic Commission for Africa and Annual Conference of African Ministries on Finance, this date. And Mr. Speaker, sitting on finance and budget and knowing how much we are struggling as a country to create a debt management strategy, this is a very important thing that the CS has to attend. And what impresses me is that he responded on 29th, it came to SBC, it was indeed considered, and communications were made. Now, Mr. Speaker, we have CS, Honorable Aisha Jumwa. I am privy to the fact that her letter came yesterday when the Senate already had adjourned to go home. These colleague senators had to come here today in the morning, knowing very well that we are expecting this CS. Now listen to the content of this letter, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of writing this letter is to confirm I forwarded the responses to the statement sought by Senator Amida Kibwana on gender-based violence in Kenya's political space. Further, due to conflicting schedule, I will not be able to attend the meeting scheduled to take place on Wednesday. The other colleagues, CSs, have indicated that they will desire to be here. They are requesting for a rescheduling of the meeting. And these are CS who tell you, I will not attend that meeting on the day that you want me to attend. My responses, I've given them to whoever asked me. They are not even recognized that these people are actually people who are representing the larger population. And therefore, if you find that my responses are not adequate enough, you can consider calling me back to the Senate. Mr. Speaker, Chapter 10 of the Constitution talk about 3 very serious C's that we as a House must then try to deliberate on. Number 1, it talks about a leader who holds public office to the magnitude that Honorable Aisha Jumwa holds, and even ourselves, must be a capable leader. Number 2, must be a competent leader. And number 3, must be a credible leader. All those C's are disputed by the content of this letter. This is the highest level of disrespect, not only to you as a speaker, but also to this House. So I hold the view that in response to the content of the letter that we have received from Honorable Aisha Jumwa, this House must then invite the content of Standing Order number 51. And a member of this House, and I want to wish the majority side the courage, especially the majority whip, that this afternoon, go draft a motion and bring into this House for the censorship of this particular minister. Because it's the highest level of disrespect. And I've shown you very clearly why the other 2 ministers, I will take their responses as a senator as first, reasonable, 2, respectful of the time of our speaker, and respectful of the time of this honorable House, and more importantly, accountable to the people of Kenya. But this is completely unacceptable. And I think for us to send a message of why we did make the decision to actually come with these particular standing orders, this CS must be censored. And if the majority whip does not take the courage to draft that censorship motion, and then number 2, the Senator for Nandi does not follow with the courage to try and do that censor motion, Mr. Speaker, I will take the courage and come with that censor motion. So that as a House, we send a message to CSs that we are not here to waste our time. Mr. Speaker, we have got so many bills, and again, amazing bills. I've read the bill by the senator for, the good senator from Mombasa, Senator Miraj, who actually cares about gender issues more than what the CS has done here, in a place where violence is killing women in this country. And I need to be spending my time considering a motion, Mr. Speaker, a very good motion. And we have got so many other motions other bills that are very good in this House, that we need to be spending our time discussing the absence of CSS every single time. So, Mr. Speaker, as I said, I plead that this particular one needs a serious response from this House, and I hope that the majority side, led by the bullfighter, Senator Boni Aluale, will take action. But if they don't, then today or tomorrow, I will bring that motion, and I hope that the senators will reasonably find that motion very reasonable and very good for the people of Kenya and for this CSS. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Kenya.
Asante Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii niweze kuchangia. Kuanzia mwanzo nataka kukashifu haya mazoea ya mawaziri wetu kuitwa hapa, ilhali tayari tukiangalia katika orodha ya mambo ya yale ambayo tulikuwa tunapanga kufanya katika bunge hili, tayari tulikuwa tumeanukuu na tunajipanga vilivyo kusudi tuweze kuyaangazia. Kwa hivyo ninakashifu kitendo hicho. Lakini hata hivyo, Bwana Spika, ninataka kuungana na mwenzangu Seneta Mungatana vile alivyosema ya kwamba ukiangalia katika kanuni zetu za kudumu 51D, Bwana Spika, ninaona kwamba tutakuwa tumetumia nguvu nyingi sana kwa yule waziri kusema ya kwamba yeye, nimesikia kulingana na wale wengi walioongea hapa, wanasema ndio waziri wa barabara alipeana sababu, waziri wa fedha ndio amepeana sababu, lakini waziri wa jinsia yeye achukuliwe hatua ambazo ni kali zaidi. Lakini Bwana Spika, nikiangalia ni vizuri vile ambavyo Seneta Mungatana alivyosema ya kwamba katika SBC yetu tupange ya kwamba tukue na faini ambayo tutakayopiga waziri kabla hajachukua hili jukumu la kusema ya kwamba tunataka kumtimua, Bwana Spika. Na hata tukimpatia ile faini hata kama ni milioni 1, milioni 5 vile alivyopendekeza, Bwana Spika, hata ijapokuwa yule waziri hajafika katika jumba hili, ndio tuangalia kwamba amepeana sababu ambayo inafaa, kwa sababu pengine ameenda shughuli ambazo ni rasmi na hawezi kosa kwenda, kama nilivyokuwa nikimsikiza Seneta Eddie akisema ya kwamba ndio yule waziri ama katibu wa kudumu amekwenda mahali ambapo kunafaa, na kwa sababu yako katika kamati ya fedha anasema ya kwamba ndio waziri hangeweza kuja. Kwa hivyo nataka kukubaliana na Mungatana tuwe na mfululizo mzuri, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu ndio leo amekosea. Na hata mimi nilipokuwa wakati ule mwingine waziri wa usalama nilimgoja hapa, nilikuwa nimejitayarisha kwa sababu watu wa Laikipia walikuwa na changamoto mambo ya usalama. Unapata vile vile kuna shida nyingi, watu wanapitia Elgeyo Marakwet na mahali kwingine, Bwana Spika, na Baringo. Tunauliza maswali hapa na waziri anasema hataweza kuja. Lakini Spika, sababu anayokupatia unaona ni sababu inayotosha zaidi, anakuambia kumetokea maafa Lamu na hangeweza kuja, na ukiangalia vizuri unaona hayo ni mambo ambayo ni ya dharura yalitokea. Kwa hivyo tunapaswa kuangalia. Nataka kukubaliana na Mungatana 100%. Kwa hivyo kuwa tukiangalia, kwa sababu ndio anaweza kuwa ana upendo na angetaka kuja. Lakini hata hivyo, Bwana Spika, tusiwe tukakejeliwa sisi kama seneti, kwa sababu tukifanya haya mazoea, Bwana Spika, tukubaliane na wao, itaonekana sisi, na wamekuwa akiangalia hivyo. Leo tukubaliane, tuseme ya kwamba ndio Kipchumba Murkomen waziri wetu asije, yule mwingine asije. Kama mawaziri hawatakuwa akija, Bwana Spika, tuondoe katika kanuni zetu za kudumu. Hatutaki mawaziri wawe wakija hapa, tukutane nao katika mazishi, tuulizie maswali kwa mazishi, ama katika kamati zetu vile ambavyo tulikuwa tukifanya. Kwa hivyo, Bwana Spika, nakubaliana na wale walioongea, lakini nikimuuliza Eddie kwa unyenyekevu mwingi, nikimuuliza kiongozi kiranja wetu Boni Halwale, waziri wetu ambaye ni waziri wa jinsia, kwa leo, Bwana Spika, kwa leo tusilete ule mswada wa kumtimua, lakini tuseme ya kwamba aambiwe amefanya makosa, Bwana Spika. Na vile vile nimewasikia, Bwana Spika, wengine wakikurai uandike barua ama utoe hukumu ya kusema ya kwamba dakika 30 waweze kuwa amefika hapa. Bwana Spika, ningekurai tu kwa leo tukubaliane, uambie kosa limetendeka na utoe msimamo mkali, Bwana Spika, lakini kwenda mbele, Bwana Spika, tusimame wima kama nyumba ya seneti, tusije tukadharauliwa na kukejeliwa. Bwana Spika, nataka kushutumu kitendo kilichotendeka na nasema asanti kwa wewe kunipa fursa hii.
Senator Miraj.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa kuweza kunipa fursa hii, na mimi nitoe hisia zangu kutokamana na kutofika kwa mawaziri wetu katika kikao chetu cha leo asubuhi. Kwa hakika ni jambo la kutamausha na la kukasirisha na kughadhabisha, kwa sababu tumerauka, tumewacha vitanda vyetu ili tuweze kupata mwelekeo wa yale maswali